my most enjoyable time of the day was the bus journey because, of course, I had no friends. So I would sit alone and listen to music, and especially the early journey in the morning. I'm a morning person, so it was like 7:15 or something. And I listened to all the Beethoven sonatas. I listened to all the Mozart sonatas played by famous pianists. But again, well, to be honest, I couldn't wait to get out. Okay. But the thing is that it's not because I didn't want to be here. I wanted to go somewhere where music is a priority. And the idea of living full time in a boarding school with only musicians. Only with musicians who want to do the same thing all day.
100%.
It was just heaven. I loved it. I loved every second of it, and I didn't feel homesick at all. Forget the West. It's going to Korea and Japan that changed my view on this.
Oh wow!
Yeah, here's a non-Western culture who's adopted Western classical music and excelled at it. Why can't we do the same? This is the question I start. What do they have that we don't?
Hello everyone and welcome to a new episode from Careers Talks with Tamer. We are super thrilled to host the internationally acclaimed pianist Karim Said on this episode. Karim first came to global recognition in 2009, where he played with the late Sir Colin Davies and the English Chamber Orchestra. He has also played with Daniel Barenboim at the BBC Proms. Karim has played at some of the most iconic venues in the world, including the Carnegie Music Hall in New York, Berlin's Philharmonie, and Tchaikovsky's Conservatory in Moscow. Some of Karim's most notable achievements include being named an associate of the Royal Academy of Music in 2017, being featured in a BBC documentary about his journey as a young music prodigy, and founding the Amman Chamber Orchestra and the Amman Institute of Performing Arts. In this episode, we will talk about Karim's journey, the sacrifices and the rewards of a career in music, and his advice for aspiring musicians and artists. I hope you'll find this video insightful. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Karim, how are you today?
I'm great. Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for coming. Karim, I think I would like to really start to know how your journey with music started, and especially how you chose the piano as your instrument. Can you tell us about that journey and how did it start?
Yeah. I started playing the drums, actually.
Okay.
with my father when I was about three years old. And then my grandmother, who lived in the floor below us, had her own piano. She played the piano. And growing up in Palestine in kind of British schools, British Anglican schools, she learned music. It was very common in those days. And she was a talented pianist. And I used to see her and hear her playing. And one day I asked if I could try as well, and they found me a teacher. And that's where I got very lucky, because they found me a fantastic teacher,
Miss Agnes
Bashir.
Yeah. She also taught one of my brother's piano as well, actually.
Yes, really?
Yes.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, she had just arrived from Iraq.
Yes.
After the Gulf War, first Gulf War. So that was a very lucky meeting, and I was very fortunate. And we started. And I sort of lost interest in the drums, but I remained interested in classical and non-classical music. At the beginning, I was my father's more interested in pop and jazz.
Okay.
And and he would also sort of teach me chords and pop songs, and I would have classical lessons with her. And then at a certain point, I think she advised my parents that she believed I had some talent.
Okay. And
that we could possibly work together on a more professional path. And so I gave my first recital when I think I was 7. And then at 9, she prepared me for an international competition in Bucharest, which I won. So yeah, and then sort of took off, and I continued to be interested in non-classical music as well.
You played some jazz.
Some jazz and yes. Pop with my dad mainly, and then was only until later, around when I was about 17 or 18, that I decided to focus on classical music exclusively.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I'd already moved to England at that point.
Yes.
We can talk about that. Yeah, but that's how it started. How it started. And I started having lessons with Agnes at home. And then a couple of years after that, or three or 4 years maybe, I don't remember, she said, why don't you join me at the National Music Conservatory here in Amman? And that opened the door to playing with the Jordanian Orchestra at the time. And played a Mozart concerto with them 2 or 3 times. And yeah, sort of things got more serious, especially after that concerto and winning the competition. And then, when I was about 8, I guess, I decided that this is going to be my profession.
You were convinced, that decision.
I was convinced that it was going to be a profession, but a way of life, because when you go into classical music, the classical part of my journey at that time, you need to start very young,
and you need to practice for long hours as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's what led me then to. She advised my parents. She said you should probably take him out of Jordan and send him somewhere else. So then the search started for the right school, and my father, my parents. But I guess my father was leading on the search. My parents concluded that England is the best place, and the Purcell School of Music is the best place. And I went there when I was 11.
Yeah. And how did you feel throughout this early stage of you pursuing more of a professional path in music? Because at an early stage, there's a lot of choices for a child of different hobbies, and you have to, as you mentioned, commit a good amount of time for you to pursue. So was it something you felt that kept you that convinced you this is the right thing to do, or what was that factor that made you commit to this path?
Yeah, I mean, love of music is but it's not just a love, it's a passion that gives you a sense that you need it, like you need food or water, the basics in life, not even clothes, but but I need music. And that was, I remember, but that was a challenge mainly when I lived here in Jordan, because when I went to England, I went to a specialist school for classical musicians. So the whole curriculum was based on training professionals. So there weren't that many distractions. There weren't any at all, actually.
Yes.
The distractions were here, where there's no such program. There was no such program at the time. I'm trying to change that now. Attending a normal private school here, and of course there were lots of activities. The activities were fewer than they are for the current generation.
Yes,
not that many, but there was of course football, basketball, and I did a bit of that for a while. Sports are an issue for musicians, because especially basketball, that had to stop almost immediately, because if you break your fingers and so on. Football I did for a bit, but I just wasn't interested. I remember I joined with something that was called the Amman Little League. Basically every weekend we'd go and play in football, and I just I asked to always be the goalkeeper.
Okay.
Because I knew that meant that I don't have to run too much, and I can just stay where I am. And then obviously I couldn't care less. The goals were going in one after the other. So it was just because my parents said you should try doing sports and stuff. And so it was just, I'm waiting for the break to eat cupcakes. So it was. They didn't force me to do activities or anything like that. I wasn't that interested. I was quite by nature. I have a kind of single track mind that this is what I want.
Yes.
So all of that didn't last very long. The challenge actually was school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
As in the academic path and making sure.
Yeah, everything. School, socially, and so on. The whole setup in that private school was so. I guess uninterested in the arts, and of course the kids also. Yeah. Didn't come from families that had interest. So it was quite a lonely existence because there were very few. There were 2 or 3 kids that were interested, a bit older than I was, than I am, But and we had a band, basement stuff. It was fun, but that's not enough.
A professional, indeed.
No, and it was a very demanding school academically. Yeah, IB program and stuff, and so my parents asked if I could miss certain classes at school. To be able to practice, because as you said, you need to fit in several hours of practice a day. And the only concession was music classes, because they said, well, he's quite advanced, he doesn't need these classes, he can practice. But music classes at that school, or most schools actually, were 40 minutes a week or something.
Very broad.
It didn't help. I remember I used the school bus every morning back to school and back from school. And of course they were Walkmans and CD players, portable CD players. And my most enjoyable time of the day was the bus journey, because of course I had no friends, so I would sit alone and listen to music, and especially the early journey in the morning. I'm a morning person, so it was like 7:15 or something, and I listened to all the Beethoven sonatas, I listened to all the Mozart sonatas played by famous pianists. But again, finding CDs in Jordan was impossible at that time. There was one music shop that had cassettes, not CDs, and I also had a cassette player too. But there was no classical music. Their definition of classical music was Yanni, which for me is not classical music. Probably a very talented pianist, but that's not what I was aiming for.
Type of,
So I would wait for because I've got family in Lebanon as well, my grandmother and cousins and stuff. Lebanon did have a lot of CDs and cassettes and stuff, and eventually they opened the Virgin Megastore there before here, and so I would wait to go there to buy CDs, or if anyone in my family traveled to Europe or the West in general, I'd ask, can you, and my father especially, said, can you go and buy me CDs? But as I grew older, when I say that I mean 12 or 13, I was very particular about which artists I want to listen to for which composer. It's very fussy. So, and my father wouldn't know what to buy me. So, I couldn't depend on him anymore to get the right CD. So, all of that was just being in that environment. But I had very supportive parents. And that was a very supportive environment at home.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and that was the most important thing in the end, because I spent most of my free time practicing. And to have parents who encourage that is it's probably the most important thing for a musician, 100%. Because they can block their whole future.
They can make it or break it in this phase for the pianist or for their child. If they don't know or identify the talent early on and know where to channel their child's energy and how to foster, help them basically grow their skills professionally so that they're on the right path. So I'm sure your parents did a great job, given who you are today and what you've achieved as a world-class pianist.
They were very supportive, supportive. And when I was very young, my mother would attend piano lessons with me and make notes and stuff. After a certain age, that wasn't necessary anymore. But my father continued to supervise my practice. So that's the thing, because as much as you love music, very few kids love practicing. Children. I love practicing now. But the commitment to practice is, of course, a discipline in the end that needs to be followed through day in, day out, no matter what. And so that was my father's role, really, to make sure it gets done. And it wasn't, it was always supportive. But of course, as with any child, sometimes I had to be required or forced to practice. And but then it was always, he would remind me that this was my choice in the first place, and that I could stop. So I didn't have that kind of tiger mom or tiger father.
Yeah.
It was a good balance. Yeah. But then I left them quite early. I was 11. Went to England. Yeah.
And we're gonna talk about that a bit. You've been both a pianist but also a conductor.
Yeah.
How do you feel in these two different roles?
Yeah.
When you play the piano, when you conduct a piece.
Yeah, very few people manage to do both. And I'm certainly not at the same level of experience as a conductor. You can practice the piano whenever you like, if you have a piano, or if you have access to a piano. Finding an orchestra to conduct is not that easy. And I was fortunate to have gone to England to a music school where everyone was almost equally passionate about music. So I would often just get my friends and create an orchestra like that.
You had a couple of orchestras.
Yeah, school projects, but they let me then once conduct the school orchestra as well. In a formal concert. But I put on my own concerts. And so I did that as soon as I arrived. I said I'd always wanted to compose as well. But I felt that I have a burning passion to actually conduct. And the piano was sort of part of that, because when you prepare to conduct an orchestra, you often play everything at the piano. But I also loved playing difficult pieces at the piano. And I remember my teacher at the time in England saying, you've got to really make sure that you can. There are two different disciplines, and if you've got to bring them together, you have to be very careful about how you spend your time. And that's still true till this day. When I left school and went to the Royal Academy, I took a decision not only to focus on classical music exclusively, but to focus on classical piano.
Oh, wow, okay.
And, throughout my bachelor's and master's, that was my main focus. And I'd already started to perform internationally. I'd started to perform internationally earlier, actually. But things took off. Obviously, when I'm not at school, at university, you're an adult. You have more freedom to travel and stuff. And things were growing. The BBC made the documentary about me, so things were developing. Karim's Journey, not the BBC Allegro films, but was shown on BBC. A very, very, very important documentary filmmaker about music, Christopher Newpin, who's sadly no longer with us, who was throughout the process of making the film as close as family to me.
Wow.
It wasn't just about that movie, which took 7 years to film.
Well, true. Yes, they filmed it throughout different phases of your life.
Exactly. We'll come back to that. But the point is that I focused on piano. I changed my teacher at the time. Went to a different teacher, who never discouraged me from conducting. She said, "You'll end up doing both. I know you will." But there's this kind of golden time. In your life, which is about before university, about 14, 15 till about 22, 23, you really need to hone your technical skills. And that's when you're in many ways at your peak as a performer. In many ways, I've developed a lot since the age of 22. I hope so, at least. But a certain energy and a certain clarity of if you really go down this kind of single track path, if you do it at that age, you have that energy that is hard to retrieve afterwards, especially as you have then other things to think about in life and responsibilities and thinking about how to make money and all of these things.
100%.
But in that time, it's really in many ways your peak. And she said, the motor skills required for playing the piano are so much more intense than those required to conduct. We have basic patterns as conductors. It's a very different kind of work. It's a lot of it is to do with your knowledge of music, knowledge of theory, of harmony. A lot of it's psychology, because you're managing a large group of musicians. These are all things that don't require motor skills.
True.
So the advice was, and it was sort of a decision, not only just because of the advice, that while I'm at this age, I better get those technical skills, because once you have them, they're there for life.
The conducting
the piano skills. Focus on the piano, because you can only do that really. At that time, and then you can develop conducting later on. And so things took off though with the piano career quite well. I'm not I'm not a superstar, but
I think you are. But
no, not really. No, not really. But I mean, superstars hardly ever exist anymore. Anyway, in this age. But in classical music, I'm talking about. But yeah, I received a certain degree of recognition.
Yeah.
And concerts were coming. And so there wasn't time for a while to do conducting until I decided to start my own orchestra in England. And got some funding for that. But then I was offered I approached Bank al-Ittihad and they had intended to approach me at the same time. And we started a small orchestra here that has now grown in 2018. So that's really 2018 is when I would say 2015 is when I started doing my stuff in England and then gradually became more and more serious, and now I'm very focused on conducting.
Yes, and I've seen the documentary, and the way you conducted, you were super passionate about it. Not that you're not passionate about playing the piano, that also shows, but I felt also with conducting you really loved to do it. And I've heard like some of your colleagues in the school say like, oh, he's a great conductor to work with, so you really liked doing it and you were very good at it from a very early age as well.
It is it's a different thing. I'm equally passionate about both actually, and I just hope that I manage to continue to do both. I hope that I never have to choose. And but I'm definitely at an earlier stage with conducting, because as I said, if you get 2 or 3 concerts a year as a conductor who's starting out, that's actually very good.
Okay.
But if you practice the piano twice or 3 times a year, I love both, because in the end it's all making music.
Yes.
But the difference is with the piano I can create the sound myself, which has its own pleasure, and then with the orchestra you enable the sound through other people, which is a social element.
Yes.
It's also very very beautiful. So
100%. And touching a bit on that very early phase, because you moved when you were 11, which is a bit of a tough experience, especially going to England, where it's a very different weather from here, very different culture. And there's a lot of sacrifices throughout the process, like spending time with your family, being away from home. It's a bit of a challenging experience. Do you ever regret going at that age, like 11 years old, to England, or do you feel that it really like made that difference? And
well, to be honest, I couldn't wait to get out. Okay. But the thing is that it's not because I didn't want to be here. I wanted to go somewhere where music is a priority. And the idea of living full time in a boarding school with only musicians. Only with musicians who want to do the same thing all day.
100%.
It was just heaven. I loved it. I loved every second of it, and I didn't feel homesick at all. And internet was young in those days, and Skype was non-existent, or maybe it just started and was very. It's not smart. I didn't have a smartphone or anything. It was. 1 phone call per week on a payphone, put £1 in, they call you back and stuff like that. But that I felt that I maintained a very good relationship with my parents.
That's good.
Even though it was just 1 phone call a week, but it was consistent. My parents are very systematic. It was every week, and then there were long school holidays in England.
Oh yes.
The Easter break is long, the Christmas break is long, and so I would manage to come back to Amman at least twice a year.
Okay.
Sometimes 3.
When
I was younger, I then started to have other interests in the holidays and didn't want to come back. Sorry, I'm not coming for Easter. I want to go somewhere else and do things that I'm not going to talk to you about.
Not to share on the podcast.
No, I didn't say anything. But in any case, I mean, and I would sometimes stay with friends. I had legal guardians, of course, when I was under 18. So I had a great time, and I felt that the other thing about boarding school in general, not only music boarding schools, is that when you do have these long holidays, And even if you're not, traveling to a different country, so this applied to some of the kids who were British but lived, didn't come from London or came from Scotland or whatever, they would also go home. Not as, they go home more than I did, but not that often. It's not possible to go home every weekend.
True.
Or for other Europeans and stuff, you get to spend more quality time with your family because, you're there for the whole time. You're not going to school. You're not doing other things. True. You're there for 2 weeks,
and it's family,
and it's just family time. So
100%.
And there's communication before, and it was a very, very good time in my life for sure. I don't regret it. Maybe 11 is too young for any child to be separated from its parents, but
if you want to pursue a professional path, then
I guess it's a sacrifice, but not really, because they were intelligent about how to manage it. And they would actually visit me sometimes as well, especially my father, who often had business in London. So even if he had a business trip or something, he'd maybe stay an extra day or two, go for some meals together and stuff. So
nice.
But obviously it's young.
And now you came back to Jordan after 18 years abroad, if not even more, right?
Oh, more. So I left in 2000 and I came back in 2021, September 2021.
So 21 years, which is a very long period. What inspired that decision? How do you feel now that you're back in the place where it all started?
Nothing in particular, because I want to be somewhere where I'm fulfilled musically.
Okay.
I can live anywhere. I don't have any particular attachment to Jordan or any other place. My attachment to the UK is because of the happy time I had there, playing music and so on. And I enjoyed love, and I grew up there. But I can live anywhere as long as there's music, and as long as I'm able to make a difference with music. The unique thing about Jordan is the need for more cultural activity, not only in the world but in this region. It's not as active as some of our neighboring countries.
True.
And so this is a place that needs more. So as a classical musician, it's a rare opportunity to go somewhere with so little awareness for this area of the art, and I find that very exciting.
And how do you feel like playing here, or maybe in the region where you're from, like the Arab world, compared to abroad? Like, does it feel different, or as a pianist it's just this relationship
honestly
between
when I play
you
concerts
and
it's me and the music.
Exactly.
Put me anywhere. I feel the drive to make music and to share it with others is so great that it doesn't matter where it is.
That makes sense. I think a bit on, like, reflecting on that, if you look back at your journey and the sacrifices, is there anything that you do differently, or a decision that you change if you go back in time, or maybe something that you regret, or not really, like you feel that you've done the right thing and you've taken the right decisions?
No, I mean, it's impossible to always take the right decisions. I don't regret, but sometimes I wonder, had I done this, had I started conducting earlier, had I said, okay, no, I don't want to be a pianist, I'll just be a conductor, had I maybe stayed 2 more years in Jordan and spent more time with my family, had I not gone to Berlin and stayed in London, or vice versa, had I, I always wonder these things, but I'm trying not to spend time regretting things, because whatever decisions you make lead you to a certain point in your life, and you have to continue the journey. And make new decisions if you need to. So I know this sounds very
no, but it definitely is
pseudo philosophical. But I don't really regret anything. I used to wish I was born in a country where music was so appreciated, but then I wouldn't have the fulfillment of introducing audiences to new pieces of music. That's a beautiful thing. And the region we're in general, including Jordan, has a lot of talent. And throughout my time in Europe, I met a lot of other Arabs who are in classical music. And with the Amman Chamber Orchestra being based here, which is Jordan, a country that's hospitable to anyone from the region, it's a great opportunity to bring Palestinians and Palestinian Lebanese musicians together, and everyone's allowed to come here, and that's it's so exciting. I would have missed out on all of that if I was born as a German in Germany.
Correct.
Maybe I'd be conducting a more professional orchestra at this point, or maybe not. Maybe I'd be a private piano teacher with no mission in life.
True.
So it's everything. It can be any kind of disadvantage, I believe, can be turned into an advantage,
and that's very important to do. Otherwise, you're wasting energy on thinking about things that you cannot change. Can you tell us a bit more about what you're doing now in Jordan and the project that you've started, and how's it taken off, and where is it today?
Yeah. So when I left London in 2014, moved to Berlin, and towards the end of 2017, I remember I sent an email. I'd heard that the Amman Symphony Orchestra had collapsed here, and so I thought, well, there's an opportunity to start a new orchestra, and I emailed Bank Al-Ittihad because I knew that they were very keen on the arts.
Okay.
In fact, the bank itself has a concert hall.
Oh, wow.
In the headquarters building, there's a concert hall, which I had performed in many times as a child during school holidays. And, the Salfiti family are very supportive of the arts. So I knew that they might be interested. So I sent them an email. And they said, well, actually, we had a similar thought. It's time to revive the orchestra or start a new one and bring this back. Because there had been a decent orchestra before in the 90s. Predominantly, the musicians were Iraqi, like Agnes, who, she's Georgian, of course, but she really established herself in Baghdad with her husband, who's Iraqi. And so this huge group of musicians came, and so there was a big presence at that time. I don't know, let's not get into what happened, but the orchestra sort of died out, and it was time for a new one. And so I said, why don't we start this fresh and have an exciting project? And so they wanted to do the same. It was a very happy coincidence that the timing was really good, and we met a few times and then launched a group of 12 string players in 2018. And that eventually grew to now our members are, depending on the concert and the program, it ranges from about 40 to 50 musicians.
Wow.
Who are predominantly Arab. It's a regional orchestra. We focus on the Levant. And then we have some guests from all over the world who play certain instruments that we just can't find in the region. Or the people who play them are unavailable or don't meet the criteria we have. So that's how it started, and then we'd reached that number of 50 musicians 1 month before COVID hit Jordan, and Jordan shut its airspace for a long time during COVID. I remember, so I couldn't come back or continue. Musicians couldn't come, and concerts were cancelled everywhere. And I was not doing much as a musician. And like most people, but I mean, I did not want to do stuff online.
Fair enough.
I didn't like the idea of performing online, and a lot of my colleagues in Berlin were very proactive. And I said, I'm going to use this time to learn new music, to think about what I want to do with my career if this is all over, if it's over. We didn't know when it was going to end. And so that's when this conversation started about setting up a foundation here so that this orchestra has a future.
Yes.
So we're not only dealing with musicians who are already grown up, we're training a new generation. so that we increase the number of Jordanian musicians in general, and Jordanian musicians in this orchestra, and so that a new generation views an orchestra as a legitimate and inspiring career path.
Which we lack, unfortunately. But now you're
we're still, it's early days, but it's a problem everywhere. Most countries, musicians are always like a clique. So this is not unique to Jordan, but there's very relatively little exposure here.
Yes.
So it was all very exciting. We spent about a year or a year and a half planning it, and then once the airspace opened up and the borders opened up again, I settled here. I would go back and forth to Berlin for a while, and gradually the trips to Berlin got less frequent, and then it's only really 2 months ago that I ended my residence in Germany completely, and now I'm here. I also spend a lot of time in Lebanon, and that's how it all started. But so the school is up and running. The music department has been running since 2022. That was the first department to open, which is the one I'm responsible for. This year, we launched dance and drama as well.
I saw that. Yeah.
And these they have their own directors. So it's actually a performing art. It's called the Amman Institute of Performing Arts.
Wow.
It's all part of the Bank Al-Ittihad Foundation. And I believe their goal also is to have a dance company in the school, a theater company in the school as well. And they're already performing.
Yeah.
The dance company is already performing.
Yeah.
And there are some theater productions in the pipeline as well. So it's exciting. It's not just music.
Yeah. We've never had that. Like as a joy, I grew up here.
Yes.
And I was interested in music. I know, like the initiatives that were here. It was none were very structured like this, and we didn't have any drama or dance, like proper drama or dance schools.
There are initiatives, but I think it's very important that we spent so long planning it carefully.
Yeah.
And maybe the fact that COVID happened was an advantage because all of us had time to really put in a lot of time and effort, and so and this was things like writing the curriculum.
Yes.
It's not something I could have done when I was active before COVID. There was a lot of traveling as a performer. There was a lot of rehearsing, playing concerts, going to concerts, meetings. So to sit and write a curriculum is not something I could have done. So I had all this time, and writing a curriculum taught me so much about music because I had to revisit a lot of my own education and also tailor it to what I know of Jordan.
True.
The problem of kids not having 4 hours a day to practice.
Yes.
So maybe we need to teach things in a different way.
Yeah.
And I had to do a lot of research and also a lot of musical soul searching. Because also, if as a musician you do things really young, you might not be aware of the learning process. Because it was so long ago. And kids learn very fast, but if someone comes to music a little later, as often they do at AIPA here, how can we help them? It shouldn't be a matter of forget it. Miss the boat. There must be another way. And that requires me to think about the process of playing and about technique in a way that I didn't have to when I was a kid. And that taught me a lot, and I think I've improved because of it. Like I feel my technique has changed. Because of that time.
Okay.
And having the time and space to think things through was a very nice way of spending the COVID break.
I find it really inspiring what you're doing, like in a region like here where you had the choice to stay and do your international concerts, where you played in many different Tokyo, Madrid, Dubai, many different countries, but you decided to come here, commit time to the younger generation of your region, which I highly respect. And it's super, super exciting. I'm passionate about the arts, so seeing this is something that makes me very happy, to be honest.
That's very nice to hear, and I think it's very true. It is about. I often felt, even though living in the West was probably more enriching artistically. I often felt at a disadvantage being Arab in general and Palestinian specifically.
I can relate. I'm half Palestinian, so.
And so I thought, but why should we have a different set of rules as Arabs? Yes. Why? And why are we not producing enough? And I'm not just talking about Jordan here, the whole region. Of course, Lebanon is kind of more advanced than Egypt, but these are older traditions. But why in general, are the numbers not as high as, forget the West, it's going to Korea and Japan that changed my view on this.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, here's a non-Western culture who's adopted Western classical music and excelled at it. Why can't we do the same? This is the question I start. What do they have that we don't? Now, a lot, a very, 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 very rich economy. Okay, so let's get that out of the way. I'm not naive, but on the other hand, what can we learn? What can we do that's similar? What are the things that don't cost money? For example, discipline.
True.
That doesn't cost money. It's just, and we have it in other areas. Especially Ramadan, for example, where things are very disciplined.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So why can't we apply that rigor to the arts as well?
100%.
We have it in our culture, obviously.
100%.
And how can we? What can we change? What can we? So all these questions are very exciting for me.
Agreed.
Being back here for that reason is very inspiring. So I'm addressing that, but also, as I said, going to a place that needs classical music and wants it, because our audiences here are growing. Actually, in all the concerts that we did.
That's a question I had, actually. Yeah, it's interesting to know that the audience is also growing.
We just had our concert last night for January.
Oh, wow!
We do one concert a month, basically. Okay. Almost.
I missed it. I wanted to.
It's okay. I would have invited you, but I couldn't because it was sold out 3 days before.
Oh, wow.
I wasn't playing last night, but I organized it. Okay. It was members of the orchestra.
Okay.
We resumed concerts after a break because of the genocide in Gaza. We felt out of respect we need to pause. And then at a certain point we started doing them again, and proceeds went to Gaza.
Nice.
And then we found that actually it's important to support our people in Palestine by being present also. That if we disappear, then we've been silenced. And we have Palestinian musicians in the orchestra, and we don't want to deprive
more important them. To be
so
more active.
After that pause for out of respect,
yes,
our concerts, I guess we started around April or May. So from the spring last year till 2 days ago, we've only had one concert that wasn't sold out in advance.
Wow, okay.
And when I lived in England and came back for holidays and often played concerts, it would be the same 150 people that came to the same concerts, okay? I barely recognize anyone anymore in the audience. And even from month to month, sometimes I'm seeing the same faces, but a lot of new faces. The people there are younger people attending, so it's already, there's clearly
a change
in Jordan that I want to be a part of.
That's very good.
And there's a need and a hunger for classical music that's growing.
Okay.
So this is it's great to play in London where there are 4 concerts a night. But you're not introducing something new.
True.
That's
true. And it feels different when you see change in a region you know much better, you're more familiar with, you culturally. I mean, probably you also lived a lot there, but
I lived most of my life there. But so I'm learning a lot about here now. But it feels, I know what you mean. Of course, culturally, I'm aware of both.
Yes.
And people are that's the other thing I noticed, a change in the way people listen to music.
Okay.
Our audiences now are very quiet.
Okay.
Yeah. Phones don't go off anymore.
Okay,
and stuff.
That's good.
It's a very. I sometimes feel like I could be at the Wigmore Hall in London, where it's so quiet you can hear a pin drop when the pianist is not playing or playing something very. I feel that things. It wasn't the case before.
It's improving.
Yeah,
and that's good to know.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not a matter of improving. I'm not placing value judgment necessarily.
Yeah.
But you get a much richer experience if you're in a quiet hall.
Yeah,
you appreciate the music very differently, because you elevate the status of music to high art. as opposed to it being a form of entertainment.
Okay.
So for me, the world of classical music, they call it either high art or serious music.
Okay.
As opposed to commercial music, where the whole experience is to do with you dancing, having fun, and talking, and drinking, and whatever. And so here, it's about it's a sort of spiritual experience,
connecting emotionally.
Exactly,
with what's being played or the piece.
You invite people to reflect on their lives while we're playing for them too, and so that's really changing. And I'm excited about all of that. And so yeah. I also work with very enlightened colleagues at the foundation, and I have, I guess, for the first couple of years, I really did need to focus exclusively on this, because any project at the beginning needs your full attention as someone who's leading it and part of the founding team, and leading the founding team actually as well. And of course, it was COVID. I am very fortunate to be able to continue my activities in Europe while living here as well. And I've just recorded the CD with the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic, which is being released next season. And I gave my Carnegie Hall debut a couple of months ago as well in New York. So it's still possible to have...
You went back to having a mix of what you're doing here plus your more international activities.
Exactly, it's all about very careful time management.
Yes,
and careful planning, and it really depends on the people you're working with. So if you have people who get that, then then you can do.
You have more time on your hands,
because I think it's important that the student who studies at AIPA knows that all of the staff. Music staff are active performers. That's a very, very important advantage that we have.
Because when you perform, you're an active learner in a way, right? You're learning from your own experience. It doesn't make sense if you're only teaching and not learning in music. I feel especially like where you have to reflect, and the more you learn, the more your students will benefit. So even you going internationally again would even help the foundation, the institution, the orchestra in many different ways. So that's great that you're managing to do this again now, given that you've built strong foundations.
Absolutely. And also another thing is I believe that I have been performing since I was 7 years old. And I say, first concert was 6, but first full recital was 7.
Okay.
I learn something every time. I learn something new about music, about myself as a performer. Every time I perform to an audience, I learn something new. I play in different places. So, of course, it was a huge experience to perform at Carnegie Hall and work with American musicians. It was at the Violin Recital Hall. So what I learned there is passed on to the students here.
100%.
And music is alive. As it should be a profession that's alive and continuously developing. So stagnation is really bad for any kind of creative energy. So and to keep developing, you need to meet other people. You need to play in different places. You need to So 100%. It's all very important, and we're all on the same page at the foundation. So that's very fortunate.
That's good. That's good. I wanted to ask you a bit more about musicians in developing countries, which was also like your experience when you first started. As you said, the resources are scarce and probably they don't get as much encouragement and much time as they do in more developed countries. What's your advice in terms of like the resources, the support? If it's limited, what can they do to advance their
I feel like careers? I can answer that more having lived here for the last almost 4 years.
Okay.
Because as a child, my family set up this bubble for me that was very supportive. And then I left. So I don't know. I started to learn about these issues through talking to students. And, in a couple of cases, in one case especially, a student really wanted to study music, and one parent was for it and another was against it. And I really believed in this student. I really believe in him still. And I invited the parents to my office, and I said, he's very talented. And if you don't really develop his talent at this age now, he will be miserable for the rest of his life, in my opinion, because he's such a natural musician. And I believe he'll never forgive you. And so the parent who's for convinced the parent who's not for. Okay. And I said, you take that home. Yeah. I'm going to leave it there. And then luckily he came back and said, no, I'd like to try to audition to a university that offers both.
Academic path and music.
Yeah. And I'll make my decision once I pass, if I pass, and so on. And I could potentially, because he's very bright academically as well, apparently. Wow. I wouldn't know, but I'm told that he gets very, very high marks with very little effort. So he could potentially study two things at the same time. And that, I believe, was a very happy moment for me. My advice would be, I don't know what I'd say. It's very difficult for a child to go against his or her parents. Yeah. It's very difficult.
True.
But luckily, these parents, even the one that was against, was open-minded enough to come and meet me.
Yeah. It helps. But I mean, you're right, because at that age, the parents play a big role. So there's not much the child can do except if they go against what they say. And
it's just I can tell, and this is not only people from our part of the world, but I've met people in the West also who weren't supported by their parents, and they all have something in common. They never forgive their parents.
True.
I've met so many people who come up to me after concerts. Oh, I wish they let me be a pianist. I wish they let me study. I wish they would. I have music inside you. It's a bug. You have it inside you.
Yeah.
I wish they supported me. I wish they. And they're often very unhappy. Unfulfilled artists are generally unhappy people. So.
Agreed. Yeah. 100%. Karim, I'm sure a lot of people are curious about a day in the life of a musician. So can you tell us a bit more about what you do on a...
Yeah, I think it depends on the musician.
Yes. Yeah.
Orchestral musicians are often, if they're freelancers, they go from project to project.
Okay.
So there's actually probably not much routine in terms of the same routine. It's not a job where you go to the office.
Not a 9 to 5.
Soloists can not play concerts for a month and then play 5 concerts the following month with a lot of travel. So it's very difficult to generalize. I'm balancing. I do have a job running the school and the orchestra. And I do have a performing career, so I need to make sure I have time to practice every day.
Every day. You still do it every day?
I try my best. It's impossible to do it every single day because sometimes you just have emergencies and stuff, but almost every day, yes.
Wow.
And
for how long, if I may ask?
Or
it depends.
I combine preparing for the orchestra and piano practice and listening to music and all of that creative stuff. Basically from about 8 a.m. till 1 p.m.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's different now than it was before when I was just a freelance pianist. I would do 4 to 6 hours a day in those days,
Wow.
But now I combine lots of things and the mornings are my time to do everything. Okay. And then 1 o'clock I start sort of more administrative things and stuff. And then in the afternoon teaching and teaching supervision and planning and all that stuff. So that's how I divide my day at the moment.
Yeah.
Obviously, when I go and do a project somewhere and there are rehearsals, then my day is structured around the rehearsals and the performance.
Yeah.
Whatever time it's either given to us or agreed upon with other musicians. So, but that's the kind of setup I try to have. A lot of musicians are night owls. Okay, so you have people who enjoy practicing after 1 a.m. I've met them and stuff. They don't have neighbors. So it really is. I think it's important for every musician to find what works for them.
Okay, are talented and want to start a career in music, but they wonder about whether they can build a financially sustainable career out of music. What's your thoughts on that, and how risky it is to pursue a career in music in your opinion?
It's risky, yeah. It goes back to your other question about parents discouraging.
Yes.
Because they're in some ways right. And in the end, it's what I said at the beginning of the podcast, is if you have this need inside you to create music, and to listen to music, then that should be your priority in life.
Yeah.
And then if you can, it can be a very lucrative career. But in most cases, and in my own, it's what what's called a portfolio career. So I think a very fruitful life is one that includes teaching, performing, giving master classes, lecture recitals, for example, where you talk to the audience before, because you can play in different venues where some not very high profile venues, but serious music lovers would appreciate some words before the concert, and you can have lots of those. And that's the most important thing is really time management. That is the most important skill a musician can have that's not technical in music.
Yeah.
But as far as the music business is concerned, it's important to be flexible, and not to think, okay, I'm just going to wake up, play the piano, and I never want to teach, or I'm going to wait, or to say, that's it, I give up, I'm only going to teach. Okay. I think that both, unless you are particularly passionate about teaching only, and some people get nervous performing and would prefer to experience music that way, that's great, as long as it's what you want to do. And so, but in most cases it's a combination. And also, as a classical musician, you have the option of chamber music. You have the option of, as a pianist, to accompany singers or to accompany other instrumentalists. A band, if you do crossover stuff, which a lot of pianists are doing now. They're turning to electronic music. I can barely switch a laptop on, but that's I even printed out your questions on a piece of paper. So
it's actually the first guest that ever.
No, I'm not friendly with technology at all. But a lot of classical pianists are, and or they might be good at coding, so they work with software that produces interesting hybrids of styles, and it's important to find what's natural for you, what's right for you, and to view music as quite a wide. The sky is the limit of what kind of music you can do, but find the right combination, and then you can increase the opportunities of what's possible. I mean, the most famous story is a very famous composer, Philip Glass, who drove a taxi, a New York taxi.
Wow.
And then there's another composer, Charles Ives, who was actually, I think he worked at an insurance company or something. Normal desk job.
Yeah.
Goethe, the famous German writer, was a civil servant.
Yeah.
So in the end, all these people had a passion for something, and that they made time to do if they wanted. For some people that works. For others, keeping a job is absolutely out of the question. They need their time to themselves completely, which I think I'm a bit of both.
Okay.
I do enjoy teaching. I do enjoy education, mostly when the student is passionate.
Yeah.
Even if the talent isn't great, but there's passion and they're serious about it. When I absolutely feel like my soul is totally destroyed, as when I'm teaching someone, and luckily I'm past that stage in my life and career, that doesn't want to learn, is being forced to learn, doesn't care, doesn't want to make the effort. That is so destroying for a passionate, and that's what most people fear, that they end up doing that to live. But if you're also able to compose, I mean, a lot of, again, not myself included because of the challenges with technology, a lot of people write music for games on the side.
True. Movies. 100%.
And then if you become a film composer, that's a very lucrative thing. I mean, if you write,
it's a big
it's a big thing, which also needs to be studied, and so it's really not looking at music as this one big scary thing, but actually a very wide industry.
100%.
And some musicians who are trained classically decide to switch over to a different genre, like jazz or pop, but they have the classical foundations and that works for them. They can also become producers. If they happen to be good at maths and physics, which often musicians are, then they can go into sound engineering and become studio engineers and studio technicians, and they're still in music. So it's the most important thing is clarity on what you can do, what you're good at, and what you absolutely love.
Correct.
Within music,
and finding that
sweet spot is finding that sweet spot, and finding someone who needs it. And at the Royal Academy, especially in the master's program, there was a big emphasis on career management, self management.
Okay, it's crucial. I think.
Because a lot of musicians don't have managers and don't have. I don't actually. I have worked with many agencies, but I don't have one myself. And so then you've got to learn to present yourself, to promote yourself in a way. I'm not talking about social media, because social media has been helpful to me, but not the most helpful thing. The most helpful thing is actually contacts that I've met,
of course,
and keeping them, maintaining them. Often when I lived in Europe, I would attend events, I would bump into other people, other musicians there. That would lead to an opportunity. It's being very present in the scene. And of course, a social media presence is important. But all of these things, but you do need to accept the risk. Whatever you do. Whatever you do.
I agree.
Because even a stable job like mine here could collapse in theory. Because we don't need musicians in the way that we need doctors.
I see your point.
But for a lot of people, in their minds, the need is equal, like my own mind. But for most people, it isn't. But in my mind, of course, a society without music is not a healthy society.
I agreed. And to flip the question a bit, if someone is in their youth or any age, let's say, but maybe youth because it's primarily who follow Career Talks, and they want to start exploring music, what advice, like they think they're talented and they want to start with music, like what advice do you have for them?
Listen to a lot of music. Listen. Choose your instrument carefully. Choose your mentor or teacher very carefully as well. But be driven by the sound that you hear. That's so important.
And if, like, how would you, or what advice you have for them if they want to start exploring on the side something? Like, should they start learning, or should they start, I don't know, using, like, they don't have these skills, or let's say I want to start producing music. How can I start, for example? Like what?
I don't. Again, this is all music technology,
which is not your.
I just don't know, but I know about it a little bit, and there are actually very advanced university courses on music technology. It's getting more and more common. It used to be someone who's talented musically and has a good laptop, and they enjoy their own company in the basement. It's not the case at all. Even when I was at school, there were the music technology course on the A-level program had started, and it's now a very, very advanced thing. There are computer labs for music.
Correct.
And you know, they Logic is one software that people use. That's the most famous one, I think. And you need to learn how to use that and stuff. But also on the music technology course, I know through looking at lots of different curriculums for my job, there is actually a very important component, which is music education, not just technology. So you need to know the theory. You need to know you might not need to be very good technically on an instrument, but you need to be able to play at least the keyboard so that the MIDI would work. And understand how music works first before the technology part. So the advice is, if you're going to do that, study music as well. Actually, like, music needs to be studied. But that's why my first advice would be just go with passion and listen and be inspired by the sound you hear. And then decide how far you want to take it. If it's going to be a hobby, then make sure it's always pleasant. And in the end, make sure that you're enjoying yourself when you're playing music. if you want to be a professional, make sure that other people enjoy your playing.
Yeah, true.
As well.
That's a good point. Yes,
it's not just you having fun on your own. Yeah.
Otherwise, it's tough to build a career around it. Probably.
Exactly. But there's nothing wrong with playing music just because
you want to and you like to do.
Where it gets complicated and sensitive for people when the distinction isn't clear.
Yeah.
And that's when delusion can happen. That you think you're this fantastic and so on, but you've never spent more than half an hour a day practicing. It's just unless it happens once every 100 years where that can work. But that literally, it's when you find that even in those cases, they might not be practicing for hours, but they'll be listening and composing and in music for many hours without counting.
Yeah, that's a very good point. If you want to pursue something professionally, whether in music or beyond, you need to just commit time. Simply,
I think you need to be so obsessed that it's not an option not to commit time.
Yeah.
It's an obsession if you are going to be a professional.
Yeah.
Beyond just enjoyment. Enjoyment has to be taken so for granted that of course you enjoy it. It's the obsession. It's the need to achieve something that's important for a professional.
Yeah.
While you're enjoying it, the amateur is the person who just wants to enjoy it. True. And we need both always.
Yeah. No, I agree.
And I believe every professional should keep an amateur inside.
Passionate,
the amateur part needs to stay. Whatever happens, you need to be always remember your first contact with music and why you started.
Yes.
Because it's also easy to fall into the trap of it becoming a job. So here's another gig tonight. Tomorrow I'm going to play and
beats the purpose of you trying to take that audience member on a journey, or just becomes like, I have to
a job. Okay, here we go, another hour, and then I'm going home to watch Netflix or something. So you need to feel lucky every day.
Agreed. We're reaching towards the end, so I want one of the tips you gave to musicians is, if you're playing for a composer, read about them, know them as a human being, to be able to really feel their music. Flipping this question a bit, can you tell us about yourself as a human being outside
really
music? or do you think that your life is all about music? Like,
no, I occasionally go to the toilet and stuff. I'm joking. I am obsessed, but
from your answer I can tell it's all about music.
No, I do eat. It's of course I have very important people in my life. Human beings are very important, and I have a very supportive network and people who are very, very close to me, and they are a big part of what keeps me going as a musician, because I want to share it with them.
Yes.
But of course, I wouldn't be the same person if I wasn't a musician. I've been doing it for as long as I can remember. Literally, I don't remember life without it.
Wow, yeah.
Because I was young, so I can't imagine anything without it. Really, I can't imagine what if I would do something else in life. It's not something I ever thought about.
Wow. Okay. Very interesting. My final question would be, like, looking back at your career, do you feel like fully fulfilled, or is there anything more that you want to do, or what your goals in the future? Is there something you really want to achieve?
I think fulfillment has to come from playing music, and the fact that I'm still doing it. And I survived this profession. That's fulfilling. It's
a great achievement, honestly.
Yeah.
And you've done more than just do the bare minimum.
But I mean, I think I'm allergic to artists who feel they've understood it all, understood what it's about. I want to learn new music all the time. I want to listen to new music all the time. I want to discover things all the time. And fulfilled in the sense that I'm a musician. That's always going to be fulfilling.
Yeah.
I want to play in more concert halls. I want to travel to more countries. I want this orchestra here to grow into a symphony orchestra one day. So if you ever feel as an artist, if you ever feel, okay, this is it, I've done it, then that's a good time to quit. It gets boring.
True. And do you ever consider doing like a totally different style, or you think classical will always be your style?
I mean, I wanted to be a jazz pianist first. And I still absolutely love jazz.
Okay.
I want to compose more, and I have always composed, but it's getting harder now that I have a job. However, I started writing a piece again last month. I'm really excited.
Wow.
And I feel that there are just so many different styles of music available to us on our phones and on our laptops. I'm very inspired by certain composers today who bring other things into classical music in an intelligent way. Generally don't feel inspired by fusion.
Okay.
If you say let's mix Western classical music with non-Western music, it rarely works for me, mostly because of the different tuning systems. I find it very confusing.
Okay.
To have a quarter tone or something against a equal temperament pitch.
Okay.
If you know what I mean.
Not really, but I'm not that technical.
The different cultures have different way of tuning instruments. So I feel that if you need to choose one and stick to it. But on the other hand, you can have different tuning systems within Western music as well. But there's a certain frame that you don't leave. And on the other hand, bringing in things like pop or jazz or electronic music, if done well, can be very inspiring and interesting. And I hope that one day, at least for my love of jazz, I'll find a way. I am an amateur as far as jazz is concerned. I only play if no one's listening. For myself, for that reason, because I want to have fun. Don't really want other people to hear it.
Enjoy or hear,
No, I would love them to enjoy it here, but then it's a commitment that I can't make because I'm committed here. So I do it just for myself, and I listen to a lot of jazz. I mean,
who do you listen to?
Miles Davis is very important to me. Bill Evans, the classics, but also I love Keith Jarrett, Chick Corea, all this kind of stuff. And if I can find a way to bring that into classical music in a convincing way,
it'll
be very hard.
Interested to see
what's interesting is a lot of these people that I mentioned now also did classical music at some point and recorded classical music, like Chick Corea and Keith Jarrett. They've recorded, and it's very interesting for them to hear them play that stuff. But it's very hard to mix both in the same music. If I can achieve that one day, I'd be very happy.
Wow, I'm interested to see what you do in that space. It sounds super interesting. I love jazz, so that's why I'm saying that. Karim, it was really a pleasure talking to you. As a person who's passionate about music, I've learned a lot, and it's very different from the episodes I usually do. So the topics we've discussed and what you've done in terms of building a career in music, someone who came from a similar background, I really admire what you've done and what you're doing now. So I'm really excited to also see what you'll do in the future in your job and also the jazz thing.
Thank you, and this is it's great to talk to you.
Thank you,
and I'm looking forward to following your podcast series.
Thank you very much, Karim.